What's good, football gamers? It's your boy Fan checking in with another College Football 26 YouTube video, and this one will make for my very first surprise of the year. I assumed this would be pretty cut and dry, but it turned out to be anything but. As soon as I mentioned pipeline tiers, there it is, it'll be the third video in a row that I've mentioned them or how OP they can be for recruiting. As you already know, they act like a multiplier of sorts for all of your actions. You could have no pipeline tier or 1 through 5, with 5 being the biggest and the best. What I wanted to do here was show you how to find your pipeline tiers for your schools, so you could figure out where you and your coordinators should be from as far as their pipeline goes to either shore up your weaknesses or make you really strong in some of your primary pipelines. And in a way, we are still going to do that. I'm going to give you a key that you can use to decode where everybody is from in these pipelines so you can figure out where you should be looking for your strongest chance prospects. But things got a little bit complicated as I started to dig in for this video. As far as I thought, the pipeline tiers were going to be a combination of which ones the school had baked in, which ones your coaches were coming from, and then some magic algorithm of where your recruits were coming from over the last few years. I believed some of these parts to be dynamic in that you could change them, namely where your recruits are coming from and the coaches that you're picking and where their pipelines are at. This year, the only information we have on pipelines comes in the Dynasty Deep Dive, and it really just says that we're going to be able to pick them for our team builders. So I went back a little further, found the 25 Deep Dive, and found out that I was mistaken about a huge part of this. Well, I was wrong about part, but I also think pipelines aren't necessarily functioning like they're intended to, but let me explain. So I went down this rabbit hole, found the 25 Deep Dive, and pulled the information about pipelines that was there. I found what I was looking for about your coaches' pipelines offering a boost to recruiting, but also language that said specifically that a school's pipeline will never change. What I had remembered about pipeline tiers was just how they set them up in the first place. They looked at 10 years of recruiting data and where their prospects were coming from in the real world to decide these tiers. But that's not an ongoing calculation. They're locked in as is. I'm going to show you proof of this in the second part of the video, but from everything I can tell, there is actually nothing you can do to affect your school's pipeline tiers at all, including creating a coach or bringing on coordinators from other pipelines. I use Rutgers as my experiment, and no matter who I had on the coaching staff or how far I advanced into the future, none of the tiers I did or did not have changed at all. Like I said at the top, I expected to be doing a video about how to separate your coaches' tiers from your school's tiers, and that just doesn't seem to be how it works. You'll see in a second, but all 3 of the coaches on the Rutgers staff have Big Apple as their pipeline, so I assume that dropping all 3 of those and adding 3 pipelines from elsewhere would drop my Big Apple score and raise whatever pipelines I had added to the staff. That did not happen. But we can start with what I did learn about the different types of pipelines and how to decode what exactly they mean so you can figure out where you should be searching for your strongest prospects. This is kind of a wild ride, so let's get right into it. Let's start off with the stuff that we can know for sure. There are 41 pipelines you can select from in the game. Apparently that's down from 50 last year as per the 25 Deep Dive. They're divided into 3 main categories. There are 26 pipelines that are just a whole state. There are 6 that represent regions of the country or multiple states, except for one of them. And then there are parts of a state, usually designated by a direction like north or south. Here are the 26 states with their own pipelines. I won't read them all here, but I will give you a second to get a screenshot if you'd like. The 6 regional pipelines are as follows. We have Big Apple, Big Sky, Metro Atlanta, New England, the Pacific Northwest, and Tidewater. Taking those from the top, my own home pipeline of the Big Apple is just New York and New Jersey prospects. Now, Big Sky is usually just referring to Montana, but from what I can tell in looking at the Big Sky Conference that don't actually have their own pipelines for the state, I'm left with Montana itself, Idaho maybe, Oregon probably by geographical location, although not entirely by conference, Washington, Wyoming, North Dakota, and South Dakota. But honestly, this confusion doesn't even make the top 3 weirdest parts about pipelines, so just keep watching. Metro Atlanta, though, might make that top 3 list, because as far as I can tell, it's everyone that's not in South Georgia, which appears later as a part of a state. So this is the only intra-state region, but they didn't give it 2 directional designations like they did when they broke up any other states, so I don't know, man. New England was a little more cut and dry, with Connecticut, Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island. The Pacific Northwest brought us back to obscurity, though, with Idaho technically appearing as included in this region too, but I'm pretty sure this is going to be Oregon and Washington, but particularly the Oregon that's not near Portland State. And finally, the Tidewater region, which included Virginia, Maryland, North Carolina, and Delaware. The states they broke into pieces are Florida with Central, South, and North, Texas with East, North, and Southwest, California with Northern and Southern, and then just South Georgia, when you can look for the other one in Metro Atlanta, I guess. So there you have parts of the state pipelines as well. Now, I told you this video wound up being a lot more than I expected it to be, so I didn't cross-reference this list too extensively, but I know Illinois, at least, is kind of lost without a pipeline to call home. In my Rutgers example, every single prospect from that state had a 1 pipeline tier bonus, but I have no idea where that fit in, so you might find cases like that too. But at least by now, we've found out the different pipelines and where to get prospects for each of them. And here's where I would dive in with Rutgers to show you the strategy on how to choose your coach's pipelines. And here's where everything gets weird. Rutgers by default has the head coach, the OC, and the defensive coordinator all from the Big Apple pipeline. When you load into a dynasty with them without changing any one of those guys and hit the recruiting board, I sorted pipeline top down and started making notes of the pipelines I saw that we definitely had. Easy enough and expected to be at the top of the list, New York and New Jersey have 5 scores, so we know that Big Apple is indeed maxed out at a tier 5 pipeline score for the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. At the 2 pipeline tier, we have Pennsylvania, which has its own pipeline, so we're showing for a 2 there, as well as prospects from Maryland and Virginia, which means we have a 2 tier for Tidewater. Central Florida has a 2 pipeline tier, and my geography sucks, so I had to Google it, but then I also found out that South Florida has 0. The same procedure shows me that Southern California has a 1 tier, Connecticut prospects have a 1 tier, which means New England is my regional bonus there. South Carolina, Ohio, and South Florida all also had 1 pipeline tiers, and then Illinois, wherever they fit. We had 1 pipeline tiers for literally every prospect in the state, so there's that too. So now I know what the default setup had for pipeline tiers, and I wanted to see what switching coaches would do to my final tallies. So naturally, I fired everybody, hired my own guys, and advanced 4 years into the future to make sure that the roster had turned over completely and that all of my coaches were indeed coded as a part of my team and had been for a couple of seasons. And that's when I made the realization. It was 4 years into the future, a totally different roster, and 3 brand new coaches, all with brand new pipelines other than Big Apple. And Rutgers tier bonuses never changed. All of them, from the 5s through some of those 2s into the 1s and all the way down through pipelines that we didn't get at all, stayed exactly the same. At the end of the day, I think this is just a skill issue on my part, and I misremembered what I thought I knew about the dynamic nature of pipeline tiers. It turns out that that's just not the case at all. They don't change, and to EA's credit, they never told us that they would. They just said we would get a recruiting bonus for having coaches in a given pipeline. I guess I assumed that meant pipeline tier, but maybe there's some sort of ghost buff happening even if you're not showing for a pipeline tier bonus that's affecting coaches when you're targeting players from within their pipelines. I'm not sure, but that's the best I got right now. And finding the answer on what we might call these hidden pipelines might be more effort than it's worth, especially if nobody has noticed a difference yet. I know this was a bit of a roller coaster, but I hope we at least were able to give you a key to decode where you should be looking depending on what pipeline tiers you're showing for strong in, and also give a concrete answer to which pipeline is best for my coach, the answer to which, unfortunately, is it doesn't seem to matter. I'm not sure if this is functioning how it's supposed to, but it's better to know than just let it be a mystery. Curious to see whether we get anything adjusted here in patches to come, but for now, at least you know. I do think it would be cool to have some mechanism by which we could impact our school's pipeline tiers, because like I've said a few times now, they're an excellent tool in recruiting. For now, all we have is Team Builder to choose ours, and hopefully that gets extended to the rest of the teams in game as well. As always, I've been Fend, y'all have been great, and I'll catch you in the next video.